To those of you that don't know me, which is I'm sure many of you, my name is Harry Kalymnios, and I am a coach, consultant, speaking trainer on the topics of mindset, resilience, health, well-being, self-leadership. Essentially everything that can make you feel what I call or deem superhuman. And really it's my mission to help empower leaders to become the best self-leaders they can, so that they then in turn can lead other people the best. Because as a leader, then you need to really be able to lead yourself first. And all that comes from a holistic view of health, well-being, mindset, resilience. And so really that's my mission. At the moment, I do that via books and blogs and live coaching and live talks and workshops. And yeah, I've been developing that for a number of years. Creative is a product of your mind, of your body, right? And if that stuff isn't working optimally, you're not going to be as creative. And everyone is creative, right? A lot of people think that they're maybe not creative. One, it depends on the type of creativity we're talking about. But interestingly, I remember reading, and I don't remember the study, but seeing children around 4 years old, and then 95% of them were deemed creative. And then studying children at 12 years old, where it gone down to about 5%. So somewhere between like 4 and 12, that creativity, or the way that they were assessing creativity, had depleted massively because of the way we're conditioned. And this continues throughout life as we're taught in a certain way. We start to, I guess, take on habits that don't really help foster that creativity. And that can be from the things that you do, but how you eat, how you sleep. You know, if you're not sleeping well, for example, you know, you're not going to remember things. You're not going to be as productive the next day. But also, interestingly enough, when you learn something, and I was reading a study just recently, and you slept well the first 2 nights, but then didn't sleep well the 3rd or 4th night, it still made you lose a lot of that, the ability to commit that task. So things like sleep, where people are not thinking, okay, how's that associated to creativity? But actually, you know, how do people like Thomas Edison and Einstein, they came up with a lot of their ideas through a virtual dream state, where they were in a place where they were going into almost dreamlike. So Edison used to hold, I think, like a spoon or something in his hand, and he would have a problem and he would need a creative solution to that problem. And he would do that by drifting off to sleep. And then at the moment that he's about to sleep, the spoon or the balls, whatever he was holding, would fall onto the ground and wake him up so that he could then write down the creative solution to his problem. Yeah. And you have a high pressure job, like many people do, and then they maybe use alcohol to help relax them in the evening, and they mistakenly, well, somewhat accurately believe it helps them get to sleep. And it does help them get to sleep in a certain way, but it's more of a sedative, okay? And so it really knocks you out, and you lose that REM part, the dreaming part of your, or a vast portion of that as you sleep. So you're not going to then have that opportunity for creative solutions to your work problems to manifest overnight. And that's just like one example. I mean, I talk about a whole plethora of things, but yeah. My overarching philosophy is looking to what makes sense from a natural point of view. So I know, for example, a lot of people now are in a space where they're looking at smart drugs to help with their focus and creativity. Okay, I don't know if it's modafinil and Ritalin, all these things which are designed for like maybe ADHD people, but they're being used a lot more in universities and by now professionals. Now that is not what a natural solution, right? But you can create that. So you got to ask yourself, why do you need that focus in the first place? Because you've got a lack of focus because of all the other things that people are doing. So people are adding, whether it's drugs, late nights, overly stressed to their agenda, and then they add the pharmaceuticals to try and combat that, to bring back that creativity and that focus. And for my overarching philosophy is, if you want to be superhuman, look to nature first. Okay, so we don't need a lot of these solutions, these technological or pharmacological solutions, because they're just adding more problems to the situation. You can have that focus, you know, meditation, quiet time. There's so many different things from a natural point of view that you can introduce to bring that creativity to bind. I mean, even like, for example, you know, you know, people struggle with that creativity and focus towards the latter part of the day. Maybe you start to have all these things going on, and they might reach for the coffee, they might reach for that smart drug, whatever it is. But actually, there was a study out of, I think it was Stanford, and it showed like a 20-minute walk, and that was whether it was outside or in front of, on a treadmill or in front of a plain white wall. Study I remember looking at where they were assessing people's creativity based on what they could pretend a brick was. Like, so they gave them like a brick, and they said, okay, what are the uses for this? And then at one point, you know, children had great creativity on this, but adults were, you know, they stumbled after about 3 or 4 options. And then if they went off and did another task, like kind of some level of thought, but was different to that kind of thinking, maybe going and ironing or tidying up, then came back to the task, then they became more creative with those solutions on what that brick could be used for. So, you know, simple things like going out for a walk at lunchtime, being out in nature, hydration. Most people are massively chronically underhydrated, and I see this all the time. And yet, if you have just a 1% dehydration level, your focus goes. So therefore, your creativity is going to disappear as well. Simple things. So you don't need to reach for the pharmaceuticals. Yeah, I think, you know, all good things come to those who wait. At the end of the day, we might look at even, for example, and think, oh my God, what a creative piece of inspirational writing, not realizing, you know, how many iterations it took, how many times. Like some authors, everyone writes slightly differently, yeah, but some authors might be like, okay, I'm writing 500 words every single day, okay, regardless of what those words are, even if they end up in the bin, even if they're like a shopping list. I'm writing 500 words just to create that neural pathway and to create that habit to continually bring something out, so that at the end of the day, you do end up with 50,000 words of pure genius. But that's not going to happen instantaneously. Now, we live in this instant gratification culture, you know, credit cards where you buy now and you, but unfortunately, you pay a lot more later, but B, you're doing it, you know, people want this, you know, I don't know, 5-minute abs or whatever it is, and they want all these things like straight away without putting the work in. And, you know, creativity is not something, at least I don't believe it's something that is just, you've got it or you haven't. I think you can cultivate it, like, through practice. Okay.
Yeah, that reminds me of it reminds me of a speaker who said that to do an outstanding 15-minute speech, it took her about 6 months of rehearsing.
Yeah.
And comedians say that as well, don't they? Like, you know, to deliver that, you know, that joke with exactly the right kind of pause, it takes them, sometimes it can take years to master it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, that's what I say to people. Like, if they want me to do a 1-day workshop, yeah, I can probably prepare that in, like, you know, a day. If they want me to do a 2-hour workshop, you know, maybe a week or two. If they want me to do like a 5-minute speech, you know, it could take a lot longer. Okay, because you just have less room for you have less. You've got to get the vital information in the right way. So you have to work at it. That's the thing. When I do some goal setting work, and my book is all about goal setting. The last chapter, or my first book rather, I talk about, okay, you set the goal, okay, but you've got to make sure that you enjoy the process, and that you enjoy the process. So the goal might be to, for example, you know, run a marathon, but the thing is, if that's the thing, and it's going to be 3 months, 6 months away, it's really hard to have that that motivation to stay. But if you enjoy the process and you make it fun, whether you go with friends, you join a club, whatever it is, it's going to be a lot easier. So you have these milestones along the way as well to track your progress, but you've got to enjoy the process. Otherwise, if you do delay gratification and all you're doing is, you know, you're in pain for like 4 years while you work towards the Olympics, and then you get your one shot and you're half a second out on 100 meters, and suddenly your entire reason for being is disappeared. It can be crushing, and, you know, identity disappears. So I would say, although yes, definitely delay gratification, because all things that are worth having, you work out, you ask the question, how can I do this and enjoy the process whilst doing it?
Yeah, a lot of people think of their work as delayed gratification. They're working so that they can go on holiday. They're working so that, you know, they can have fun with their friends when they get their salary. So work is very often seen to be a form of delayed gratification. You're doing something that you wouldn't do. Now, this could be the difference between those who are highly creative and those who work in a different way, is that a lot of people, they wouldn't do the work they do unless they were getting paid for it. Now, yourself, for example, I believe that you wouldn't do that. You're doing work that you love, and is that right? Am I right in making that assumption?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was, to be frank, paid a lot more when I was working in the company than I am right now. I haven't got to that stage where I've exceeded that salary, but I'm doing something that fulfills me with joy, or I find fulfillment with, and I believe that whatever success I'm due will come in due time. But it's important to say, look, I know that some people, they've got responsibilities, they've got families, they've got all of these things, and so therefore they find that they feel obligated to be in a job that they won't necessarily hate, but they don't love. It doesn't fulfill them. So my invitation there is to explore ways in which you can be fulfilled within that role. So it might be that something that you really love doing. For example, I was quite creative in my role in the sense as far as I could be. So I used to work in IT, project management, service management for things like the London Stock Exchange. And so when I was there, I wanted to connect with people. I wanted to create things. So I decided to start my own newsletter, the Stock Exchange, for the IT department, which to know lots of people and design a newsletter. So I was still working in a job which I didn't really like that much, but I found a creativity outlet within there. So it's not to say, okay, you've listened to this tomorrow and I'm going to do something that's creative. No, okay. Firstly, find or make yourself feel more impassioned, and then you can look maybe a bit better. But it's important, if you can't find that with a goal, that you find it elsewhere. Even though our job might be the same each day, volunteer for things that are within there. Maybe you start a club. There's so many different ways you can do that with corporate, normal employed environment.